All right. Welcome to commercial banking. Despite what you might have heard about it, it's one of the more exciting courses that you're going to take in the College of Business. All right, let's start Chapter 1. So, what are the financial institutions that we have in most countries? All right, so we have a central bank, and the job of the central bank is to control the supply of money, okay, and to examine the commercial banks. Then we have retail and commercial banks, and we'll drill down into a deeper definition of what a retail bank is and what a commercial bank is. Okay. Then we have mortgage companies. A couple of our students from 2 semesters ago went to work for a mortgage company here in town. We have investment banks. We have a large investment bank in Arkansas. Anybody know who that might be?
Simmons?
Stevens. Simmons is a commercial bank. Okay. Stevens is an investment bank. Then we have all the major brokerage firms. Most of them operate around the world and also in Arkansas. And we have one major brokerage firm here in town, and it's a firm out of St. Louis that focuses on small towns. Who is it? Their strategy is to dominate small towns. What brokerage firm do you see in small towns, particularly in the South? You don't know?
Farmers Bureau?
No. Brokerage firm.
Edward
Jones. Absolutely. All right. Then we have investment companies. These are mutual fund companies. Okay. Y'all listen. What are a couple of mutual fund companies? Yes, sir. Well, that is a type of insurance business organization. Northwestern Mutual is. Okay. So mutual can apply to how an insurance company is owned. For those of you who took risk and insurance, who owns a mutual insurance company? You remember? The policyholders. Okay? And that's in contrast with a stock-owned company where you do not have to be a policyholder to buy the stock in the company. Okay? So what I'm talking about is a company that is in the business of taking money in and investing that money in stocks and bonds. Okay? And we call those mutual funds. Okay? And I think the largest on the planet is Vanguard. Vanguard. And then followed closely by Fidelity. But there are hundreds of mutual fund companies out there. All right. Insurance companies. So all of these companies fall into the area of financial institutions. Okay? Oops. Okay. So banks are the principal source of credit. Credit. Credit is loanable funds, making loans, providing money, making money available to individuals and families. Now, credit. Credit is the action of loaning money. What is credit risk? For those of you who have had ManFin, everybody's had ManFin, we've talked about credit risk. What is credit risk? It's a certain type of risk. There's several types of risk out there in the financial world. Credit risk is one. What is it? What does it mean? Man, y'all must have had too much eggnog over Christmas. Y'all remember what credit risk is? Somebody want to guess? Put it together. Riley.
The risk that they won't pay you back.
Credit risk is the risk that the person or organization you're loaning money to will not pay you back. And bond rating agencies measure or estimate credit risk when a company wants to issue a bond, and the banks do their own credit assessment when people apply for a loan. So banks address the needs of individuals, families. And what are they going to do primarily for individuals and families? What are the main kind of loans they're going to make for individuals and families? For families, what kind of loans are they going to make? Court. Mortgage loans, absolutely. And there used to be a kind of business organization called a savings and loan. There's still a handful of them out there, but most of them merged with commercial banks. And the laws used to say that a commercial bank couldn't make a mortgage loan. Only a savings and loan could make a mortgage loan. And a commercial bank could only make a commercial loan, and a commercial bank was the only kind of organization that could offer a checking account. Boy, how old-fashioned is that? And all those things have changed. All those things have changed. So for an individual, what do you think the number one type of loan is that a commercial bank makes?
Car loan?
Car loan, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, mid-sized companies, they make loans for payroll. They make loans for inventory, working capital kinds of loans. And banks historically have loaned money to the government to help fund government programs, okay, when the government runs short of cash. And so early on, the government of the United States had to borrow a bunch of money to do what? To build an army and go take on the evil King George, okay? And so individuals and banks loaned money to the government, and that's still happening today around the world, where private banks loan money to the government. Why do they do that? Well, for the same reason any bank loans money, to make a spread. They borrow at one rate and they loan it out at a higher rate. Okay, and we'll study that in pretty good detail. All right. So worldwide, banks grant more installment loans than any other financial service provider. So banks are still out there with a big presence, although it's shifting. Things are shifting. The last time you did a transaction online, either through Amazon or anything you ordered online, how did you pay? How did you pay for it?
Credit card?
You might use your debit card, which is backed by a bank. Okay, but how did you process the payment? Who processed it for you? I know what's the quickest way, without having to input any of your banking information, what's the quickest way to pay for an online transaction? You don't know? How about PayPal? Everybody use PayPal? Okay. And Venmo, and Cash App, the rest of them. Okay, electronic payments, which the banks are involved with as well, but they're eating into the business of the banks. All right. So what's an installment loan? It's a loan that involves a level payment, same payment every period. And you guys, we amortized a level pay loan in ManFin, okay? And part of the payment involves interest, part of the payment involves principal. Okay? And so banks are in the business of making these kinds of loans. All right? And when banks get into trouble is when they branch into loans that they shouldn't really be offering, like interest-only loans. And with interest-only loans, none of this is paid back. And every time we have a real estate bubble, the banks are involved by helping to finance the speculative purchase of real estate, and they make these funky loans. By the way, I was with a young couple. They've been out for 3 years and they're making pretty good money. And one of them said, if I don't make it doing this, this was in Little Rock, I'm going to get into flipping houses. And she acted like That was a new idea. Okay? Man, everybody and his brother is flipping houses. Who's from Nashville? Anybody in here from Nashville? Everybody is flipping houses. Okay? Now, what's happening to the price of real estate in Nashville? It's skyrocketing. Okay, it's getting to the point that if you move from somewhere in the South to Nashville, you're going to have a hard time finding a place to live. You won't be able to afford it. Now, if you come from California or the Northeast that has already been through years of house flipping, aka speculation, those people are selling homes that are more expensive in their area and moving to Nashville and thinking they're getting a good deal. But the problem is when the banks loan money to people who buy these houses for speculative purposes, they just drive the price up, 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 and up. And a reckoning will happen at some point. But as long as you have more people moving in to Nashville, which is happening, has been happening for over 10 years, the price of real estate will continue to go up. But at some point, my point is this, it's an old game, it's a game of musical chairs, and it doesn't, who's seen Talladega Nights? It ain't written in the Geneva Convention that you're guaranteed to make a profit flipping houses, okay? All right, some people think, you know, and these people are highly educated people and they acted like this is a new deal. All right, so the assets held by U.S. banks represent about 20% of all the assets that are in the financial system. You know, I was thinking the other day about our systems and what they mean. And, you know, the financial system is just, it's just a big scoreboard. It's just a big scorecard is all it is. Because you've got a country that has 350 million people, right? And there's got to be a way to keep up with what each person has, right? I mean, think about it in really, really big terms. Think about your life in big terms. So you occupy this body and you require certain things to exist and you provide, once you get out of here, you'll be doing something productive. You're not doing anything productive while you're here. And you'll be getting paid. And the financial system is just a big scorecard, you know, of what each person has. We're moving shells all over the place. It's a pretty interesting thing when you think about it that way. And what's the best way, what's the best system that will get people to be orderly, follow the rules, work hard, collaborate with each other, okay? And so far what we've got is constitutional republic and capitalism. Okay, those are the two best systems that we've figured out so far. And but we got some problems with all systems, including our own. All right, so in other countries, their capital markets, which is the stock market and the bond market, are less developed than we have here. And so banks are even more important to their economies than the banking system is to our economy. All right. So what is a bank? How do we define a bank? Because there are lots of financial institutions there. What is a bank? So a bank can be defined in terms of the services that it provides its customers. What a bank does defines it, okay? And it can be defined on a legal basis. Okay, what kind of hoops does it jump through in order to exist? Okay? So we'll look in more detail at these two things as well. All right, so looking at services. Banks are being forced to do more because of technology. And in capitalism, people are constantly looking for a way to make money. right? That's what capitalism is all about, making a profit, making a return, and people are always looking for, for ways to make money, and the way you make money in capitalism is you provide a product or a service for somebody else. It's a voluntary exchange, and so people look around and say, what do people need? And how are those needs being fulfilled? And is there a better way, a different and better way to fulfill those needs? And so technology comes along and people figure out, hey, we can use a technology we can use blockchain for accounting purposes and for payment purposes, and it's better than the current system we have. And eventually, cryptocurrencies may supplant our currency system, okay? But so people are constantly looking at how to provide services in a better way. And that's the only way you make a profit in capitalism, is you do something for somebody and you do it in a better way than how it's currently being done. Okay? Think about that. As a Christian, you're providing somebody a service, and that service is better than what they can currently get. And so what do you call that? Standard living? We call that standard living. And that's why the standard of living in the United States is so much better than it is in Russia and in China, because we are constantly looking for ways to increase the standard of living. All right? Now, Russia and China are implementing capitalism in their own ways. And as a result, their standard of living is increasing. And I'm not saying the U.S. form of capitalism is, so far it's been superior, but we'll see what happens in the future. You know, maybe it won't be. We'll see. And if other countries figure out a better way of doing it, hey, maybe we'll adopt what they're doing. We call that best practices. All right, so investment banking. That is providing services to companies. That's providing capital to companies. They do stock issues and bond issues to reinvest in their company. And they also provide mergers and acquisitions services, where they help companies sell some assets that they have and buy some assets that they have. That's what investment banking is. Okay? It's issuing stocks and bonds and doing mergers and acquisitions. Okay? Wealth management, that's helping people manage their cash flow and their debt and their estate planning and their investment and retirement planning. Okay? And that's different from investment banking. Okay? And lots of financial institutions are starting to do these activities. Okay? Not just, so you have commercial banks that are doing this and this, and you have investment banks that are doing this and this, and commercial banking. We'll look at that concept in just a second. All right. Securities brokerage, that's buying and selling stocks and bonds individually, which is kind of a subset of wealth management, but it doesn't have to be. All right, insurance. You can buy insurance at a commercial bank, and risk management, which is really kind of part of insurance, which is helping people and organizations understand, recognize what their risks are and how to best minimize their risks and how to finance potential losses from risk. That's what risk management is. All right, so let's start looking at the organization of banks. So money center banks versus community banks. So I mentioned Bank of America. Court's dad is there, right? No, where is he?
He's at BNY Mellon.
BNY Mellon. When did that happen? Has that been a while?
Yeah.
Is that when we went up there, he was already with BNY?
When did you?
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really kind of it's a trust, more of a trust bank. It's more of a custodial bank. But it's a large bank. So money center banks, okay? What's a money center bank? They're the big ones. They're the ones who started buying other banks first. They were the real big banks primarily in New York and in LA or San Francisco. Wells Fargo. Okay? So they had the vision and the capital. They're the ones who pushed for interstate banking, and as soon as it passed, they had a pipeline of banks that they wanted to buy. And they spread throughout the world. Okay? And virtually any financial service that you want, you can get at a money center bank. And there are a lot of financial services that you cannot get at the smaller banks. Okay? So if you want commodity services, for example, or you want currency services, you're not going to find it even in Arkansas. You're going to have to go to a bigger bank than what we have in Arkansas, unless you go, we have Bank of America in Little Rock. Okay? I don't think we have any Bank of America branches up here. But you're not going to get a lot of specialty services unless you go to a money center bank. All right, but then you have the community banks. Okay? And a lot, so we have, there's kind of a jump. We've jumped down from money center to community banks. And that's a big, big jump. Okay? In between, you have super regional banks, and then you have regional banks, and then you have community banks. Okay? And you can kind of visualize that what happens with consolidation is one bank buys another bank, and then they centralize, and they do that for economies of scale. They're using technology, and they're cutting people. Okay? And they're bringing their capital together, and they can make larger loans. There's a lot of benefits to it. But the difference between this and this is when you walk in here to get a loan, you know the bank president. When you walk in here, you don't know anybody, and they don't know you. And it's all about the numbers. There's no personal relationship. Unless you're one of their, if you're a Fortune 500 company that they're loaning to, okay, then they know who you are. But when you walk in here, when you walk into Simmons Bank, like the president of Simmons Bank in Searcy, which is basically, he's a branch manager, is what it amounts to. But he's responsible for like three towns where Simmons is located, is a Harding grad. And his boss before him was a Harding grad. It's Reese Jones. Okay? Ashley, is there anybody else here who went to the academy, Harding Academy? You had Reese's dad. He was your choral director, Craig Jones. So you go in to Reese and say, man, I need to refinance my truck loan. He's going to do it for you. Okay? Because he says, hey man, I know your mom and dad, I know your mom over at school, you know. So he's going to do it. But if you go in here, unless your numbers look real good, it ain't going to happen. Okay? So when these guys start buying the community banks, and that's what happens, they buy the community banks, then and then they move the credit decisions to Dallas. So you used to go to Regions Bank here. It was First Commercial.